Imagine living in a country where your future depended entirely on your skin color, your name, or your birthplace. That was America between 1870 and 1913. Could it happen again? Between 1870 and 1913, the laws shaped who had rights and who was locked out. But survival was about more than what was written on paper. It was about families fighting to hold on. It was about people who refused to give up even when the system was built against them. Today, we are taking a closer look at how white Americans, Black Americans, Native Americans, Asians, and European immigrants survived one of the hardest chapters in American history, and how their struggles still echo in our lives today. For white Americans between 1870 and 1913, life depended heavily on class. The wealthy controlled land, banks, factories, and the government. They lived in large homes, had access to higher education, and built generational wealth with few obstacles in their way. For them, this was a golden age of opportunity, expansion, and power. Poor and working-class white Americans lived a different story. Many worked long hours in dangerous factories, coal mines, or on farms for low wages. They faced hard conditions, high risks, and very little protection. Still, even in struggle, being white gave them certain advantages. They could vote, own property, organize unions, and move more freely than Black Americans, Native people, or immigrants. But poor whites were not free from control. They depended on rich landowners, factory bosses, and bankers to survive. In many company towns, they were paid in company money and trapped in debt, unable to leave. Their children were pushed into labor early, and their chances for education were limited. Rich families controlled the government, the courts, and the economy. And poor whites had little power to change it. When poor whites tried to fight back through strikes or unions, the rich often crushed them with violence, private security forces, and political power. Divide and conquer tactics were also used, encouraging poor whites to blame Black Americans, Native Americans, and immigrants, instead of challenging the wealthy elites who controlled their lives. Being white opened certain doors, but without money, those doors stayed narrow. The system still favored the wealthy, first and always. While white men held political and economic power, white women lived under a very different set of rules. They were still treated as dependents, not full citizens. Even wealthy white women, who lived in comfort, had little control over their own lives. They couldn't vote, and marriage gave their husbands control of their property. They had limited legal rights over their children, their money, and even their bodies. Society expected them to stay at home, raise children, and leave public life to men. Wealth made daily life easier. Rich white women lived in large homes, wore fine clothes, and had access to education, doctors, and travel. They could afford to stay out of factories and dangerous jobs. But comfort did not mean freedom. Poor white women faced even harder realities. They worked long hours in textile mills, on farms, and as domestic servants for the wealthy. They earned low wages, lived in overcrowded housing, and had little protection from abuse or exploitation. Many began working as children and had few chances for education or upward mobility. Still, across class lines, some white women began to organize for change. They started the early suffrage movement, public reform campaigns, and charity work aimed at improving conditions for women and children. Being white gave them social advantages, but being women meant they were still second-class citizens. That's a wrap, History Seekers. Catch the full story on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Peace and love.